Today I want to talk about a new reserve card variant. Basically, it's involved with committing the reserve, and this is just a formal way to do it. Now, it doesn't require reserve cards, but they may be used. When you place units on your reserve card, they're considered to be right behind the HQ, so when your HQ is spotted, you place them on the map. Now, this having units in reserve rule builds on that and allows a more formal way to have the whole production shown on the map, and it allows you the option of committing reserves. Let me show you what I mean. Let's take a look at the Waterloo map, and I'll explain what I mean. How to commit reserves. A block that is adjacent to its HQ is considered in reserve, except artillery. Any unit in reserve may be committed by placing it in support of any unit in combat within command range. And there it is. Boom, simple. For this reserves demonstration, the first thing I want to show you is that when a block is in reserve on a reserve card, that's basically what it's showing. The way these units are here on the map, if you have them in a reserve card, the reserve card's off to the side, all your opponent sees is the HQ. Not everybody gets a reserve card, but any HQ with subordinate units, in other words, this is 1st Corps HQ under Durlan, and these Lancers are under him. The only way a unit can be considered in reserve, when I say in reserve, I mean in the formal sense of the in reserve rule. The only way a unit can be considered in reserve is if the HQ it's behind is actually its HQ. Now, obviously Wellington or Napoleon, as army commanders, can have any unit in reserve, and they're very valuable for that reason. Although only 1st Corps' blocks can be considered in reserve for 1st Corps, they can support any battle that's within command range of their HQ. For this combat, the Prince of Orange has 4 blocks, and rather than having to decide which of these 3 blocks he's going to back up, he places Cook's division in reserve. During Durlan's activation, he attacks Mount St. Jean with 2 blocks. So he moves his Lancers and his infantry in reserve. He moves up here. Now they're considered in reserve. They have to be within range of the unit they're supporting. Technically, they're supporting the forward unit. They can be right there. They really want to break the British line here. When Napoleon is activated, he moves the guard like that. Now we're set up and ready to go. First round of combat. We're going to do this combat. He's going to do this combat, and before the combat is resolved, he commits Cook's men to the defense. If he had waited to commit them and let the first round of combat go through, if Alten here in front had been forced to retreat, that would have ended combat, and this elite unit could never have entered. So he has to commit. First round of combat, a French block is lost. Beginning of the second round of combat, any French units within command range that are in reserve can join the combat. So guess what? Durlan commits his reserves, and we go to a second round. At the end of this round, both these units have retreated. Both units are committed, they move forward, and now we begin the third round. Beginning of the third round, Durlan commits his Lancers. Third round combat is resolved, and Cook here is now actually spent. The Lancers push on through. The combat's resolved, Cook has been pushed back, the Lancers are now broke. Combat is over. Now when all the other combat is done for the turn, Napoleon announces he has units that can charge. He sends the heavy cav in to attack these routing units in the rear and finish the job. What he didn't know is that on Wellington's reserve card was Uxbridge with the heavy cav. They also can charge. Now they charge. In that round of combat, the heavy cav essentially falls back. They didn't come there to get swarmed. But the British line, though it's been pushed back from where it was, has held. Now this example was one where I basically threw in the longest possible set of circumstances that could show exactly how deeply this can go. In many attacks, there won't be any reserves available, so that would never happen. In many attacks, there might only be 1 unit available in reserve on one side, so 1 person can commit a unit to the reserve. But I just wanted to show you in a perfect storm situation how the reserve rule would work. It adds a lot of depth, and yet at the same time, it's boom simple. It's not a matter so much of the rules getting complex as the number of options increases, and experienced players will recognize them. Pub battles rewards experience over intimate rules knowledge. And this is the reserve rule. The reserve rule works like this. When a chit is drawn, the first thing you do before you move anything is you see who's in combat command with the HQ. Then you move everyone. It doesn't matter what order you move the HQ in, now you can move everybody. When you're done moving, any unit that is right behind your HQ is in reserve. In combat, when combat is nominated, any unit in reserve within command range of the attacking unit may be committed. First the defender, then the attacker commits the reserves. You resolve the combat. If there's another round to be fought, again, any reserves can be committed now before the combat is resolved. Rinse and repeat till combat is complete. Once all combat has been completed, any units eligible to charge that are in reserve can now charge. When they charge into combat, you begin the round and the regular reserve rules apply.